Assalamu alaikum. The Lahore Ahmadiyya, today is Sunday, the 6th of June 2021, and the Lahore Ahmadiyya community welcomes you to its series of broadcasts called Call of the Messiah. And this is broadcast number 29 in that series. And today we will look at the claim of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad in the words of Mirza Bashir-ud-Din Mahmud Ahmad. Remember, this Lahore Ahmadiyya community was created by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib, who said that although people say that after the Holy Prophet Muhammad, another prophet can come, but the Holy Quran says that the Holy Prophet Muhammad was the Khatmun Nabiyyin, and the Holy Prophet explained this by saying, La Nabi Abadi. So no prophet will now come, old or new. This is why Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said that his claim is that of being the Mujaddid, the reformer. But his distinction is that he was given the titles of Messiah and Mahdi by the Holy Prophet. And he further taught that although Muslims start calling each other kafirs and heretics and out of the fold of Islam and God knows what else on these differences, he said the Holy Prophet had said that if a person recites the kalima and another person who recites the kalima calls him a heretic, then it is the caller who is the heretic. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad also taught that people say that some prophetic revelation like Ayah Rajam and Surah Walai have been missed out from the Quran that we have. That he said that all the prophetic revelation that Gabriel brought to the Holy Prophet Muhammad is with us in the Holy Quran. And he further emphasized that some people say that some verses of the Holy Quran have been abrogated. But he said no verse of the Holy Quran was, is, or ever shall be abrogated. About jihad, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad stressed that it is a duty of every Muslim. But jihad has been explained by the Holy Prophet Muhammad about what it is, its nature. When returning from fighting, the Holy Prophet said, from the minor jihad, we return to the major jihad, which is to struggle against the negative desires of our own soul. Greed and envy and jealousy and dishonesty and lying. You all know what the list is, and it's a long. That is what real jihad. So as I said, today's topic is to look at the claim of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib Rahmatullah Alayh, but in the light of a writing of Mirza Bashir-ud-Din Mahmud Ahmad. Remember that the Qadiani Jamaat split from the Ahmadiyya movement because they said that Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was a prophet, and anyone who does not take the bath of their khalifa is a heretic and out of the fold of Islam. Is a kafir and out of the fold of Islam. Now, this writing that I'm going to share with you was like a pamphlet which was written by Mirza Bashir-ud-Din Mahmud Ahmad Sahib to invite the Nizam of Hyderabad to join the Jamaat. Remember, he split the Jamaat. He became the Khalifa in 1914 by splitting the Jamaat. So let us see what he has to say about the claim of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam. Remember, the split was on the issue of what did Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad claim. So, let us see, perhaps I should be small to read as I share it. So, let us go down. And first, here you can see the title of the original, the present two kings, Tofatul Muluk by Bashir-ud-Din Mahmud Ahmad, and it was published by Sadr Anjuman Ahmadiyya from Qadiani. And here it is, the original. And this is worth highlighting. That he writes, Mirza Sahib writes, here it's been highlighted in red, that after the death of the promised Messiah, the person who was, through God's grace, appointed to be his first Khalifa was my revered master Maulvi Nuruddin Sahib, who was the foremost member of the community in goodness, learning and piety. After his death, God has appointed this humble servant to the charge of the community. And I am not aware to which family God may choose to transfer this office after me. Now, interestingly, since then, all leaders, the so-called khalifas, have come from the same family. I wonder if there's a shortage of pious people in the Qadiani Jamaat that God has to resort again and again to the same family to appoint a khalifa, as they claim. Now, after these words of self-introduction, I deem it necessary to state that the idea of the present epistle had its origin in a dream. And since it is among the duties of a believer to give effect to dreams, I thought it proper that the command of God to convey to your highness the message of truth. So this is written under divine guidance. Remember this. So let us see what Mirza Sahib says about the claims of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam. So he says, the hadith supports this view. Support the hadith Traditions also support the same view. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of God be upon him, is reported to have said, God will raise uh, among his people at the beginning of every century a person as will renew the faith of Islam. In other words, the changes which men will have brought about in the faith of Islam through the intermingling of their own opinions and desires will be rectified by those reformers. Prophethood is not mentioned anywhere. Those reformers who will re-establish the faith. And through their means, there will always be raised bodies of men who will safeguard the true meaning of the Quran. Now we are told that we denigrate the position of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad by calling him a Mujaddid. So I asked the Qadiani Jamaat, what is your Khalifa doing? The so-called Khalifa. So let's carry on. And he says, the followers of Islam have no need to hunt up old books or stories. They may convince themselves of the truth of Islam by their own experience, because Islam does not close the door of divine revelation but has left it open for all times. And in fact, not only does it believe in the possibility of revelation, but positively requires that the beginning of every century should see the appearance of an inspired reformer. But such a promise of God vouchsafed to the blessed Prophet, on whom be peace, and shall always be the case of Islam. And he carries on. Up to now, thousands of men in Islam have been graced with this privilege. And no age has passed wherein there has not been present among the Muslims some claimants of divine revelation. In the cemetery of every township inhabited by Muslims, there may be seen the graves of some holy men, or some holy man or saint, who claim to have been recipient of divine revelation, and to whom, in witness of his truth, God vouchsafed information of secret events. Just as in the matter of the Sharia of Islam, there have been 4 recognized Imams. Similarly, in the matter of spiritual teachings, there are on the one hand the 4 well-known Imams, that is Sayyid Abdul Qadir Jilani, Hazrat Shahabuddin Sohrawardi, Hazrat Bahauddin Naqshbandi, and Hazrat Muinuddin Chishti. May Allah be pleased with them all. With hundreds of successors who flourished in each school. And on the other hand, there are besides these many other holy men who enjoyed divine propinquity and were graced with divine command. If they are enumerated, their numbers will pass from thousands to hundreds of thousands. These were men whose lives were for their contemporaries a living evidence of the truth of Islam. Thus, it is not simply the verses of the Quran and the traditions of the Holy Prophet which prove the existence of such men, but actual events also testify that Islam has never been bare of such holy spirits who have attained the highest stages of spiritual development and thus borne witness to Islam being a living faith. And he carries on. And since Islam alone is such a religion, the following of which has produced in every age such perfect men, therefore Islam alone can be the true faith, since none of the other religions can demonstrate the same virtue that their following has in any age produced such men, such perfect men. In fact, this is a feature special to Islam, and it is a promise of God vouchsafed to the blessed Prophet that at the beginning of each century, at least one such person will be raised who will renew the faith. Again, he refers to hadith of Mujaddid, the reformers. Now, when on the one hand it is established that Islam is a living faith and that it is incumbent that a reformer should appear in it at the commencement of every century, there being a promise made by God to the effect in the Holy Quran, and when on the other hand it appears that the present age stands in need of such a reformer who can eradicate its evils and re-establish the faith of Islam and overthrow its foes and rectify what has gone wrong with it in matters of internal and external, in matters both internal and external. Then the question arises, where is the reformer who has been raised by God at the commencement of the current century? Again, reformer, mujaddid. The word mujaddid has been translated into English. No mention of a Nabi anywhere. Then he goes on to say, his name is Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadiani. Who is that? Where is the reformer who has been raised by God? And he says his name is Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadiani, not Nabi. So we are entitled to ask what happened. So we carry on. Thus, this is the age when the promised Messiah was to appear. And now that 30 years of the 13th century have already elapsed, the non-appearance of any reformer, or in other words, the non-advent of the promised Messiah, would be a grave disaster. If one were to admit that there has been the advent of no reformer at the commencement of this century, Mujaddid has not come. Why is Mia Sahib not saying a prophet has not come? In Islam, there must be a reformer at the head of every century. Again, quoting the hadith in Abu Dawud, that every century there'll be at least one reformer. Far from the succession of reformers having preceded so far to come to a stop at the present. Then he goes on to say, but as I have already said, the Almighty God did not let this age go without its reformer. Again, reformer. Prophet and prophethood is not mentioned anywhere. So what is Mia Sahib trying to do? Either this is Hazrat Saab's correct claim, or he's trying to deceive the Nawab of the Nizam of Hyderabad. In fact, the age commenced 33 years ago. It is clear from traditions that the reformer is to come at the beginning of every century. Again, Mujaddid, in the Urdu, the word Mujaddid is used. Opponents of Islam are rightly entitled to ask the Muslims to point out to them the reformer of this century, about whose advent at the beginning of every century a promise was given to the Muslims. Praise be to God, this century too has not passed without a reformer. And it is no ordinary reformer, but even the promised Messiah himself. Later on, and Qadianis do this now, we are asked that the Messiah who was to come should have been a prophet. But what is Mirza Saab saying? A reformer, and no ordinary reformer, but the promised Messiah himself. And then at the bottom, the time for the advent of the reformers is the beginning of every century, which is already past. So you can see that the whole invitation is based on the hadith that every century a reformer will come, a mujaddid will come, not a prophet. Even where Mirza Sahib says that Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib rehmatullah alayh is the promised Messiah, Masih Maud, he still says that it was to be a reformer, a mujaddid, who was going to be the promised Messiah. So we are entitled to ask, what happened? Was Mir Sahib trying to encourage the Nizam of Hyderabad to join the Qadianis by not telling him their true beliefs? So what was he doing? But certainly it wasn't until he realized that that to create a religious dictatorship that runs on in his own family, he has to say that Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad is a prophet, that he changed his views. We have proven it. Not from our writings, not from anyone else's writings, but from the writings of Mir Sahib himself. So my friends, come and join us. We'll welcome you. There's an email at the bottom. Send me an email. I'll arrange for you to take the bath of Hazrat Dr. Abdul Karim Sayyid, who's our Amir. It should be clear to you now should be clear to you now that Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Ali and the Hori Ahmadis were correct all the time, and that you were wrong to split away and damage the movement. You are our brothers. We welcome you with open arms and open hearts. Please think about this and email me. May Allah open your hearts and minds to the truth. Assalamu alaikum. Khuda Hafiz. Goodbye.